Go ahead. Let me hear that bam, bam,
He loves
bam.
it, the Law and Order sound.
I call this regularly scheduled meeting of the Tennessee Real Estate Appraiser Commission to order. I would ask now that we have a roll call beginning at my right, which will be Dr. McCara. If you would announce where you're from and
Fred McCara, Johnson City, Tennessee.
Rosie Johnson, Paris.
Norman Hall, Brentwood.
Mark Johnstone, Jackson, Tennessee.
Eric Collinsworth, Arrington, Tennessee.
Gary Standifer, Franklin, Tennessee.
Randy Thomas, Kingsport.
Thank you. Let the record reflect that Mr. Walton from Memphis, Tennessee, and Miss Point from the far easternmost portion of the state are here. They're conducting experience in Rogersville. They're conducting experience interviews at this time. They are here and will be noted when they come into the commission meeting. This regularly scheduled commission meeting is taking place in the Davy Crockett Tower located at 500 James Robertson Parkway in Nashville, Tennessee, and notice of this meeting was posted on the Tennessee Real Estate Appraiser Commission website. Today's date is October the 13th, 2014, and it is 9:17 a.m. We're ready. First item on the agenda is adopting of the agenda. Do we have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So move.
I'll second.
We have a motion to adopt the agenda for October the 13th, 2014 by Commissioner Hall, seconded by Commissioner Collinsworth. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the October agenda has been adopted. Next item, review and approval of September Commission meeting minutes. The minutes of the September 15th, 2014 meeting have been distributed. Has the commission members had an opportunity to review those minutes? If so, I would entertain a motion for approval as presented or as revised or amended if necessary.
So move.
We have a motion to approve the September 15th, 2014 minutes as presented by Commissioner Hall. Is there a second? By Commissioner Johnson. Has seconded. Any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the September 2014 minutes are approved. At this time, we're ready for the experience interview recommendations, and we will take those. We'll take the recommendations from the commissioners that interviewed the applicants that are here, and then we'll, thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Standiford, you had the opportunity to interview Mr. Arthur Gray, trainee number 4753, and he is requesting an upgrade from trainee to certified residential. Do you have a report?
I do. Interviewed Mr. Gray. Ms. Avers sat in on the briefly. It's my recommendation that he be approved to be upgraded to certified.
You've heard the commissioner's report to allow for the upgrade from trainee to certified residential. Do we have a motion to that effect? Dr. McCara has made a motion to approve the recommendation, seconded by Commissioner Hall. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the recommendation has been approved. At this time, I'd like to recognize Mr. Eric Collinsworth, who had the opportunity to interview applicant Nicole Simpson, trainee 4252, who is also requesting an upgrade from trainee to certified residential. Mr. Collinsworth, you are recognized, sir.
Oh, yes, I did conduct the interview with Ms. Simpson this morning. She has not yet taken the exam. The interview went well. I'd like to add that was probably one of the best report files I have seen in a long time for support on a couple of her reports I looked at. The interview went very well. I think Ms. Simpson is ready to move forward, and I would like to suggest that the board approve the upgrade request to certified residential so she can take the exam.
You've heard the recommendation from Commissioner Collinsworth. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Commissioner Standiford has moved to approve,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Hall. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of allowing the upgrade request from trainee to certified residential to move forward, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Recommendation approved. Commissioner Hall had the opportunity to interview Miss Pamela Stanko, trainee 2499. She is requesting an upgrade from trainee to certified residential. Commissioner Hall, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you. Interviewed Pam today. Her reports look very good, and I would recommend that she be allowed to take the exam and to go to certified residential from a trainee.
We've heard the recommendation from Commissioner Hall to allow the upgrade request from trainee to certified residential for Ms. Stanko. Do we have a motion from this body to that effect?
Move.
Commissioner Thomas has recommended approval, seconded by Dr. McCara. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor of allowing the upgrade request to proceed from trainee to certified residential, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Recommendation approved. At this time, I would like to turn the chair over to Vice Chairman, well, he's not here. At this point, I will turn it over to former Chairman Commissioner Hall, while I make a report.
The chair recognizes Mr. John Stone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had the opportunity to interview Mr. Philip Richardson, trainee 4588, and he's requesting an upgrade from trainee to certified residential. File was in excellent shape. The reports were very good. He seemed very knowledgeable, and I would recommend approval of the upgrade request at this time.
Do I hear a motion?
Make a motion to approve.
Motion made by Ms. Johnson. Do I hear a
I'll
second?
second.
Second by Mr. Collinsworth. Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. There you go.
And thank you, Mr. Commissioner Hall. At this time, we have 3 applicants remaining, and they are being interviewed by Ms. Point, and Mr. Walton. And so I'm going to ask for a recess at this time, which is 9:25. But before I do that, I want to welcome our newest member. I apologize, Commissioner Thomas, for not recognizing you at the beginning of the meeting. You look so familiar over there. So, but we've got Commissioner Randy Thomas from Kingsport, Tennessee, who is replacing Mr. Green, and we appreciate you serving on this body and appreciate your willingness to serve. And at this time, we'll take a recess until the experience interviews are completed, and we'll resume there. Thank you. We are back in session from a short recess, and we're still in the experience interview portion of the agenda. At this time, I would like to recognize Commissioner Walton, who had the opportunity to interview applicant Jeffrey Long, who is license number 1608. He's requesting an upgrade from a license to certified residential. Commissioner Walton, you are recognized, sir.
All right, I interviewed Jeffrey Long and found his reports to be adequate, and his knowledge on the subject, he seemed to be very well versed, and I recommend him for upgrade to CR.
Okay. You've heard the report of the experience interview of Mr. Jeffrey Long with the recommendation from Commissioner Walton about the experience request being approved. Do we have a motion to allow proceeding with the upgrade at this time?
So move.
Commissioner Hall has made a motion to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Collinsworth. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the experience for Mr. Long has been approved. This time, I'd like to recognize Ms. Point. She had the opportunity to interview Ms. Marilyn Gray, who's trainee number 4703, who's requesting experience approval and an upgrade from trainee to certified residential. Ms. Point, Commissioner Point, you are recognized.
I would like to recommend that we approve the experience credits for Ms. Gray from.
Okay, you've heard the report from, of the experience interview of Ms. Gray from Commissioner Point, recommending approval of the experience. Do we have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Commissioner Staniford has made a motion to approve the experience,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Hall. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, the experience request has been approved. Ms. Point also had the opportunity to interview Mr./Commissioner Timothy Walton, certified residential 1680, who's requesting an upgrade from certified residential to certified general. Commissioner Point, you are recognized.
I would like to recommend that we approve Timothy Walton's experience credits.
You've heard the report of the experience interview from Commissioner Point with the recommendation of approval of the experience for Mr. Timothy Walton. Is there any discussion? Not all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Oh, I'm sorry.
We
Whoa,
didn't have
whoa.
a motion.
Do we have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Commissioner
Second.
Hall, seconded by Commissioner McCara. Any discussion?
I'll be recusing from this vote.
Can't vote for yourself, who can you vote for?
Mr. Walton has recused himself from this vote. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the experience approval has been approved for the upgrade request. That concludes the report of experience interviews and recommendations. At this time, we're ready for the education report, and I would like to recognize Dr. McCara at this time.
I recommend approval of the 30-hour income approach to valuation course for Betty L. Moses.
Okay, we have a recommendation approval for the 30-hour course. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Walton has moved to approve, seconded by Commissioner Hall. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, course is approved. That conclude your report?
That's the only application that we had.
Oh. As just a point of clarification, do we have to approve the individual request, Director Avers, for
Special
experience?
course approval?
Yes.
Yes.
So
This
we've
was
got,
not an approved course.
huh?
This was not an approved course. It was an expired, a long time ago course.
No, I'm talking about, not, the individual course approvals.
But this applicant had to submit her own, she took a course that was not approved
Right.
by the commission, and so she had to submit it for individual course approval, and the commission has to consider that, whether or not to get granted approval. And there's an application.
I'm sorry, I may be confused here. Is that the same one that you just did?
Yes,
That's it.
Okay, I thought you said 30 hours.
it is 30 hours.
Okay. And then I'm seeing Ashley Marie Allen. Is that, am I mixed up here?
Might be looking at the wrong one.
Okay,
The
okay,
only
here's
one
my,
we have
here's
is
my
for-
question. Oh, wait a minute. You know what? I'm sorry, I'm looking at September minutes.
Right.
Education report. Sorry, that would explain why none of this is working out for me. Okay, sorry. That explains it. Okay. All right, that concludes the education report. We are at the director's report. At this time, I'd like to recognize Ms. Avers. You are recognized. Ms. Avers?
Thank you. First item I'd like to recognize is our new staff member, Cody Kemmer. He has been working on a newsletter, which should be distributed here very, very soon. He's got a draft of the newsletter. It's nearly complete, so I'd like for him to just pass it around so you all got an opportunity to see what it's going to look like. Going to be a valuable asset to our team. He already is, actually, so I'm very, very glad to have him on the team.
Welcome, Cody.
In order to make this newsletter project fly, we are going to need articles, either from the board members or from people that you know would be good writers of articles. So if you have suggestions for articles, you want to write an article, or if you know someone who could be a good writer of articles on appraiser or appraiser-related topics, could be economics related, doesn't have to be specifically appraisal, it could be something that would interest an appraiser. Get those ideas to Cody and we can run with it. We've got a few different things that we're incorporating that might be just, some new ideas for the newsletter. His email address is easy to remember also, because
Say how often this newsletter will be published?
we're shooting for quarterly now.
And I'm sorry, when was this one targeted? You mentioned it and it went right there.
Probably in the next couple weeks.
Okay. So it's a quick fuse to ask for us to write articles, and then you're going to
So
send
this
it out
one
in 2
is
weeks.
basically done.
Oh, okay, I was
This one
thinking
is
you said you were going to ask
basically
us to
But
write
we-
articles. I
Yeah.
think that the commission would like at least a month or two notice on preparing.
We just don't want the
an
well to
article.
run dry on topics.
That you think would, be of interest to all of our appraisers, just pass it to us and we'll try to get something in development for it.
Will this include also deliberations that we have here in the commission?
Yeah.
Decisions about who, for
well-
instance, was approved for, like we did today?
Planning on doing a little
the-
bit of a recap
the
for each
interviews.
of the meetings. We'll do an article on our new appointee and stuff like that.
Is it electronic or just hard copy?
Primarily, it will be electronic.
PDF, and it'll be posted to the website and then distributed via our e-notify. So anyone who signs up will get an email saying the newsletter's available. Click this link.
Do you have a link for us to provide information to you?
I could give you guys my email, but anybody in the office, if you'll just call us.
Probably not into the microphones right now, though, just in case people are listening and, hot, sending Cody crazy emails.
Present company excluded? Yeah. Okay.
Get with me after, or, just anybody in the office should be able to help you.
So anyhow, next item on the director's report is the budget information. We have the last 3 years, and budget close information is actually closed now, but we haven't gotten the final figures from the fiscal department yet, so it hasn't, the figures for 13-14 aren't quite finalized yet. Below that is the license status counts as of October 6th, when I generated this report. Everything is holding about steady each month. Complaint tracking, we have 7 in what we call payment plan tracking, which includes anything from education, experience, probation, civil penalties, anything that's incomplete, we call it a payment plan. It doesn't necessarily mean they owe us money. It could be any one of those things. Usually it's, for us, it's education. We have 4 formal hearings pending, 3 matters that are ready to be on the legal report, 1 consent order authorized, 5 matters under review, and 3 new complaints. We had 1 applicant, Kathy Lynn Hall, submit a request to waive the experience interview. She was approved to take the state licensed appraiser examination in September 2013 after a successful experience interview. She was not able to pass the examination during the last year, and she requests to be allowed to take the exam again with the Commission's permission to waive a second experience interview. In a letter to the board, she stated she was much better prepared by her recent taking of principles, procedures, market analysis, sales comparison, income approach, report writing courses. She also feels her success with super crash reviews and the appraisal CompCram exam software has given her competency she requires to pass the exam this time. I recommend that her request be granted.
Ms. Avers, she has had 1 experience interview.
Yes.
She passed it. She was unsuccessful in her attempts, and she wants to take it again.
Her
And,
year lapsed.
Yeah, year lapsed, and she wants to bypass the experience interview. Do you recall who interviewed her?
I think it was Mr. Hall, but I'm not 100%. I know it's been a really long time, but I think that it was Mr. Hall.
All right, well, you've heard the director's recommendation with regards to Ms. Hall's, and Ms. Hall, I think, is of no relationship to Commissioner Hall,
No.
for the record. Does any discussion from this body?
I would move we accept the director's recommendation to grant that.
We have a motion to accept the director's recommendation to allow Ms. Hall, trainee 4570, to bypass the second experience interview.
And I will second that motion. And for the record, I do not know Kathy Lynn Hall.
All right.
And that is seconded.
It's hard to remember who interviews who.
That is seconded by Commissioner Hall. Any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, recommendation approved. You still have the floor, Ms. Avers.
All right. And then a second thing, we're nearing the end of the year, and we're getting more trainees calling and licensed applicants calling about, can I do my experience interview before the end of the year? And we have only 2 board meetings remaining. We also have a formal hearing and a rulemaking hearing to hold also. And so Dennis and I were talking, and the idea kind of came out, and I was going to see how the commission would feel about it. For the LI and CR applicants, how would the commission feel if I interviewed them and then made recommendations at the commission meetings on their experience interviews, so I could interview them throughout the month?
Go ahead.
And this is just a proposal. You can say no. It's not going to hurt my feelings. I certainly don't need extra work to do, but there's a lot of trainees. I am capable of interviewing residential applicants.
Ms. Avers had contacted me earlier before the agenda went out about this particular issue, and I had suggested that put it in the director's report and bring it to this body for discussion. So that's where we are on this. I guess I would be open for any discussion at this time. I
You're
think the
Now,
big
what
question I had was how many trainees are we anticipating?
It's hard to tell. Past experience, when it got to 2007, right before the change in 2007, we were interviewing over 30 trainees a month.
You're proposing to do this just for the November and
Just
December?
for the next 2 months. I do not intend to make this my, life's work. I do not want to continue on doing this, but
Mr. Hall,
I
you
was thinking
recognize?
this might be a tourniquet to a situation, so that you guys could do the CG applicants and I could do some of the residential applicants.
First, I'd like to say thank you for your generous offer. However, since we're not too sure at this point in time, how would the prospect of you or Dennis or somebody just keeping tab on how these things are running, i.e., if it looks like we're not going to be inundated, then we can continue to do it. If it looks like we are inundated, then we need to accept your generous offer. And I think the best thing, my response would be to stay in close contact with Mr. Johnstone, and the board could give Mr. Johnstone permission to say, okay, we are getting overloaded, fine, go to it, Nicole, because we're not going to have time to get all this done. And kind of just run it by the chairman to let him make that final decision as to which way we go.
Or could we say that at your discretion, we would approve it at your discretion with a discussion with him? Is that do we need to take some sort of a vote on it?
It is just a policy that the commission, there is no formal rule that you do the experience interviews at all. It just says that the commission approves the experience, but you could do that in a board meeting. You don't have to do them via the experience interviews. That's just a policy that you do it this way. So the policy could be changed even temporarily. It's entirely the board's decision on how to proceed. I just am concerned. I'm leaving now this week for the Aero conference. And when we get back, we're going to be getting ready for the November meeting. And then it's going to be a free-for-all for the rest of the year. It's going to be whatever comes in, and it's not going to be a lot of time to be reactive with these trainee applications. Dennis is going to be handling board business while I'm out, deciding what to do with these trainees, send them out to the board members, start scheduling them interviews with me, whatever that may be. I just want to make sure we have a plan in place so that we don't get to the end of the year, we have a whole bunch of people crying because they finished their experience and
We
they
don't
couldn't take the
we don't
test.
really have any idea right now.
Right now, we don't know how many it could be. It could be a lot, it could be just a few.
And so do we anticipate CGs being a lion's share of that or not? Or we don't know?
I wouldn't expect it to be because the current requirements kind of have heavily the college degree and the education. So I would guess that it's going to be more CR. You can kind of see from this month it tips more. We've had more in the past CG applicants, but this month it tipped more towards the CG. I think it's going to tip or CR. I think this month it's going to tip more towards LI and CR. Those last minute applications are going to come in because everyone's going to get panicky right before the end of the year, and they're going to make their last ditch attempt to get in under the current rules. Because there's a lot of people who don't have college degrees.
We have a motion on the floor, or are we still just talking in concept here?
Just a concept.
Okay.
I am not going to be hurt if you say no. So please know I'm not going to go home and cry if you say no. It's fine.
My initial thinking is that if we proceeded as we are right now, when they come in, Mr. O'Brien normally contacts an appraiser and says, can you do so-and-so? And either they can or they can't. And it may be 10 applicants, it may be 5, or it could be, 20. And at some juncture, when Mark gets that call and he's on number 4, he's going to go, Uncle, I don't want any more, and or so forth. And so at that time, my thinking would be let the commission work on them, kind of as they come in, and if they start coming in quick, then maybe have an ability to default to Nicole. The only problem with that is if Mr. O'Brien designates 3 or 4 CRs to Mr. Hall, and then a CG comes in, then he's really under the microscope and a lot of time. So,
Well, December is going to be, sadly, it's going to be a very busy month. Unfortunately, we've got the rulemaking hearing and a formal hearing. So I don't know how we're going to do trainee interviews also.
how many, before you, Mr. O'Brien, can I ask you a question? Before you start contacting appraisers about doing the experience interviews, how many are in the pile before you call? Is there usually, do you wait till everybody submits for the time frame, or as they come in, you start rotating them out?
I just send them out as soon as they come in.
Okay.
Simply because that is the easier way to go. But from the phone calls we've been getting and people asking us, what do I need to do to upgrade? Because I've been a trainee since 2002, for example, we're anticipating a lot. And given that the agenda is going to be so heavy in November and December, we were just afraid that you folks may not get time to do interviews. You might just have to come in at 8 a.m. and start the meeting right away.
Can I make a motion? I'd like to move that we accept the director's option to be able, just for November and December, to conduct those interviews for licensee and certified residential only, not the CG, ahead of time, and then present them for the board's approval at those meetings.
I second that motion.
We have a motion from Commissioner Collinsworth, seconded by Commissioner Walton. Any discussion?
Nicole, would this put too much of a burden on you? I know you got more than one board that you work for, and I'm just wondering, I'm just concerned that it might be overloading you, and I'm just wondering if that ought to be a cutoff point. Anytime you get above, we got, how many commissions we got reviewing these things, Dennis? 6?
6 at the moment, yes.
6, okay. So,
And
so consequently, if you get you get more than, say, 12, then anything above 12 goes to Nicole. That way, it would, allow the commission to continue doing that job, would not overburden Nicole, but yet she'd still be there to take on the overflow. Would that work?
so the problem was, I would rather have commission members doing CGs. So depending on how they come on, I think one of the board members already raised this point. If, let's say, I load everybody with CRs, as we're expecting, and then 3 CGs come in, I won't have you folks available to do CGs because of this heavy agenda that we see coming up in November, December. We're afraid that we're going to need that entire day, most likely from 8 a.m. onwards, to get the regular commission business done. Which is why we figured if we could take the experience interviews off your hands, that gives you time to start our meeting at 8 and go all the way through with the formal, the rulemaking, and all the other agenda business that comes up. So I could certainly, give you the CRs as they come, but then somewhere down the pipeline, if I get 4 or 5 CGs, then you folks would already be loaded with CRs and nobody to do the CGs. Which is why Nicole suggested let her, just in this interim period, take over CR and licensed, and leave you folks free to do the CGs as they come in.
Cut off period of time, Dennis, in other words, if I'm going to make a change, apply for a CG, is there a cutoff?
There really isn't, sir. We
consequently-
entertain their upgrade applications as and when they come in. There aren't any rules that say you have to do it within a certain period of time.
Or board meeting?
Not really. I mean,
I'm
I
just
had
wondering,
somebody.
if they come in here, all of a sudden you get something in a week before, we're to meet, even on a CG, it might not happen.
But we set the trainees with some realistic expectations. If the agenda's full and we can't get somebody to interview them, then we just have to say, I'm sorry, there isn't a spot for you, and we'll just have to accept that.
I think that's a good point Commissioner Hall just brought up. If we have somebody, as these things approach the last minute, if somebody calls, 72 hours out and wants to get in under the threshold, or they default to the other thing, that's putting a lot of burden on us to have to, knock it out real quick. Or if it's, 24 hours, I think there needs to be some kind of posting on the website or in the newsletters that says, hey, this is the deadline, but if you expect to get your experience reviewed, you better have it in a week, some kind of time frame, because I'll be quite honest, if we're meeting like on a Monday morning and I get a call Friday afternoon and to do a CG review, that person's going to be kind of out of luck. Okay.
We'll put that on the
Yes, Dr.
website.
McCare.
I'm surprised this hasn't come up before in the history of this commission. What's changed that this, is something that's happening now? We've never had this heavy of a burden of applicants before?
We did have it happen in 2007, and it was a heavy burden. What we did is we backed off all other commission business, and we just did trainee interviews for the board meetings. So in 2007, Ms. Point might remember, were you in the, right then? No, it's just you who started just after that. It was 4 or 5 hours of training interviews, and then a little bit of legal report. So it's,
Are you proposing that this be a permanent thing or just temporary?
Just through December.
No, I'm talking about a
2
month.
months.
Okay.
Month and a
For two-
half.
Yeah, for
It was-
the next two.
And it was really just to get over between that period between November to December. And really, it's cut off at December 10th because after that board meeting vote, there isn't any more applicants I could get approved.
And Mr. Collinsworth's motion was for 2 months.
Question. Nothing right now that I'm aware of in the is how far in advance someone must submit their application. Correct?
That is correct.
There's nothing in there, right?
Policy.
So consequently, would it be maybe I'm getting ahead of myself or getting commingling some things here, but would it be appropriate then to let the candidates or let the people out here know that you don't get it in at a minimum of 2 weeks prior to the hearing, you will not be reviewed to the following?
There is a notice on our application part that says you have to have your information. I think it says 2 weeks
2
in
weeks.
Okay.
in advance. There is a warning on there.
Okay.
It's just not, it's not strictly held to, like,
The reason why I asked that question, then that goes back to that 2 week gap that we've got in there. We ought to know what we're gonna have to do at that point in time. In other words, it's not gonna be like the last 2 weeks leading up to a meeting, we're gonna get inundated with 40 applicants, be it CG, licensed, certified residential, or what. Because we will know at that point in time, 2 weeks out, how many we've got and what we've got to do. Is that?
we'll know, but it'll be too late for the board to take action because we can't call a private meeting until the meeting.
I'm not talking about calling a private meeting, Nicole. I'm just saying, 2 weeks out, Dennis or you both will know how many applicants we've got to review. Is that correct? Yes. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Which means that that'll give us, commission, each individual member, 2 weeks notification. When Dennis sends us a report, we'll have 2 weeks to review that report, or reports, more than one, I don't know. So consequently, I think Nicole needs the leadway, even though she's offered to do it. I think she needs that leadway to say, okay, Dennis, we're 2 weeks out, we've only got 2 people going up for CG, send some of these others out to the commission, I'll handle the license over here for the license, and that way the commission will still stay actively involved, take some of the load off Nicole. Nicole will be taking load off of us. To me, that would be a win-win situation rather than just saying, Nicole, it's in your lap. I think by doing it this way, we can keep the commission involved, keep Nicole involved, knowing that Nicole is the safety valve over here to bail us out. But yet, we'll take some of the load off of her anyway and still keep the commission involved. especially on the residential side.
I think that motion that Mr. Collinsworth put forth would not prohibit Ms. Avers from doing that. It just gives her the permission to do that. And if she needed some assistance and we were not loaded down with CGs, she could do that. Because I don't think it says
At her
that-
discretion.
It's at her, I don't think
Well, I
she has to
think
do
that's a
every
key,
LI
I
and
think.
CR.
What I'm trying to do is make sure that Nicole doesn't feel like she's overloaded with everything. Oh, my God, I got to do all this, I got to do this. It's just getting overwhelming. Let's just keep the commission involved as much as we can be, so that way she doesn't get slammed.
Holidays are usually quiet except for this one particular thing. There's not a lot of heavy renewals or anything like that. So with regards to what I have to do, this is the most important thing I have to do.
Well, and
Mr. Washington, you're recognized.
I think also, too, I mean, Nicole, Dennis, you guys, you've got a lot better feel for what's coming down the pike as far as the workload and experience, but also all these other things as well. And I think you guys can be trusted to manage it the best way possible. We give you the latitude and the tools you need to do it. And I think that's what this is about.
If I think that something is potentially wrong with one of the reports, that it's to a level where I need to kick it to a commission member for a second opinion, I can easily do that. I mean, Mr. Collinsworth is right here in town. He's certainly he's my residential cohort. So.
Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion approved. Still under Director's Report. Ms. Avers?
Oh, I was just going to give you a brief synopsis of the AQB meeting. I went to attend that on the 18th of last month. They went over the June Q&A questions. They talked about the exam updates. They are reducing the number of questions on the exam from 165 to 125. So instead of it being an 8-hour exam, it'll be a 6-hour exam. There is 274 CAP-approved courses. They wanted us to know that, so they're working diligently on CAP-approved courses.
74 what?
CAP-approved courses, those are courses that are reviewed, the content of the courses are reviewed by the Appraisal Foundation. For undergraduate and graduate programs, they're requesting states that have real estate and finance credit for qualifying education submit them. They currently have 6 universities and 8 programs in I tried to take them all down, but they were said kind of fast. It was Denver, Texas A&M, Virginia Commonwealth, Indiana, Northern Iowa, and something else. I couldn't get it fast enough. But if ETSU has a real estate program, or if MTSU, if anyone knows if they have a real estate program, the Appraisal Foundation will come to the university for free and evaluate the program to see if the students could get credit for appraisal education. So they will come and do that for free. All you have to do is give them a room and some books to look over. Will do.
Pass it along to Dr. Barilla.
Okay.
Directly to Dr. Barilla, since he has some familiarity with the work.
All right. I'll just CC you both. That way you can tell him we talked about it. He isn't just thinking I'm suddenly putting him to work again. But it's free. It doesn't cost anything. The Appraisal Foundation will come to you, and they'll evaluate it. And then if a student takes those courses, they could get a certain amount of education hours, like, say, some of the courses, like I know the Texas A&M program for real estate degree, you could get for your degree 180 hours towards your 200 hours, and then you just take a USPAP class and you're certified residential. Or for the commercial program, you can get all you have to do essentially is take the USPAP class and you're certified, and you just have to get the experience also. So it's really the easy way for people who get their college degree, which is required, if they have a specific type of degree, to meet with the requirement. There are currently 466 USPAP instructors renewed for 2014, and then 24 new instructors. They talked about the exposure draft on background checks, and talked about that rather extensively. There's exposure draft 9. I'll pass that out later. They have revised some of the language to include essentially a little softer state oversight language so that the state gets to choose whether or not to accept people who have certain characteristics in their background, so it's like criminal convictions and things like that. So it would be up to the state to choose to whether. So for it, previously it had said if they'd ever been revoked and appraisal license revoked, they would be prohibited. And they softened that up a little too. That was the highlights of the AQB meeting.
Is that the one held in Memphis?
Yes, it was. I also got to see Jack Wade. He was there, and Mr. Hedden was there. A couple of the directors from other states, Larry Disney from Kentucky, Sherry Bren from South Dakota, Lee Gordon from Arkansas came. So it was a good meeting. It was a very cooperative effort. Actually, a lot of regulators in the room, and very few licensees, only a handful of licensees.
Thank you for that report, Director Avers. We are now ready for the next item on the agenda, which is Commission final review of proposed rules for rulemaking hearing. Ms. Gamber, you're recognized.
So just to give you an update as to where we are, I know we've already sort of talked about these informally. After we did that, I sent them to the AG's office because they have to do a pre-review for constitutionality. We are finished with that process. It did take a little while longer than we would have hoped. Such are the rules, I guess. But there were a few changes that we made throughout the process, so I wanted to bring them back to you just to quickly discuss the substantive issues of things that changed, just to make sure you guys approve those before we keep going, because I don't want to shuffle. So they are at the governor's office now. So as long as you guys approve the new stuff that we have, then we get approval from the governor's office, hopefully fairly quickly. Then we'll be ready to file the rulemaking hearing, which is where we're trying to get to.
Right, and if we
Want to go? Do what? Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
I thought our
Hey.
next meeting in December was on the 15th.
I could be wrong.
We check that before we adjourn today?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Definitely.
Are you going to go through just the specific changes? not
Yes,
the
because
entire document?
it didn't change, everything.
Okay.
There were just a few things that we changed, so I'm just going to try to highlight those as quickly as possible, and we don't need any major formal anything done. We just want to get your all's approval on the substantive stuff that changed, just so when we get them back from the governor's office, we can move on. Do you want to talk about the?
You want to,
I can, yeah, if you want me to.
Okay, so the first thing, if you'll turn to page 36 in the rules, it's toward the end there. I'm going to let Nicole explain the changes that were made to rule.
Page 36? I don't think there is a
it's a signing page.
That's probably because I was reading it off mine and not yours. Hold on one second. It's the page.
33.
Sorry. I have a hard copy. I wasn't looking at the right thing. It's Rule 1255-06-.03. Expedited licensure for certain military personnel and spouses. And she can explain to you why we had, I guess, issues with this. This is kind of the one that was holding us up. So
there's a specific state law that the legislators passed that we have to make an allowance for military applicants and their spouses to have expedited application processing and temporary licensure or registration if they are found to not be substantially equivalent. Some of this was, we had to have kind of a cooperative argument with the AG about, because as you know, we have universal reciprocity with all states because of the Dodd-Frank law. So we grant the licenses to anyone who's credentialed in another state that has a certification or a license in another state, as long as they have a like credential. But the one thing that they didn't have is that trainee registration. So potentially a military person could be a trainee, appraiser trainee in another state and be in the military, or their spouse could be, and apply. And this makes an allowance for them to apply and get a trainee registration, and it gives them a temporary period of time under this specific law to incrementally get this temporary authorization to be a registered trainee for up to 6 months.
And we already had talked about this before.
Yes.
It's not like this is something new. This was already approved by you guys informally the first time around. We just had to change some of the verbiage to agree with the Attorney General's office had a few, I guess, issues with the way it was worded. So this is more of, it's not new. It is new, but it's not new to you guys.
I have a question in reference to content.
Okay.
Was the entire section of 1255-6-03 put in there as an entire new section? Or was some of that section, for instance, item 1, that talks about license or certification meeting requirements of TCA, yada, 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 that all seems like that would have been there regardless. But item 2 speaks more specific to the trainee side. So was there any part of 6.03 that was in the original document, or is it entirely new?
No, the whole thing is new.
The whole thing is new.
And does 1, is that not?
1 is referencing the reciprocity
That's
rule.
okay, that's what so
that's
1
a-
really does nothing. I mean, it's already in there.
But we had to, right, but we had to reference the reciprocity rule. That was one of the things the AG's office wanted us to do, so.
So was item 2 and the subsequent letters A through E, were they in the original document and we striked them and then they got put back in, or were they never in the original document and the AG said, hey, by the way, y'all need to include this?
Well, originally, the AG wanted to change it to be licensed or certified, and then I kind of told him that he didn't need to do that. Because we already had reciprocity for those credentials, and then we had an intelligent discussion about the FIREA requirements, and then this is what came out of that discussion.
Do you feel, from legal and as a director, that this is an appropriate safeguard for us?
I do. I think this is fine. I don't think we'll have any problems with the subcommittee. I don't think, well, honestly, I don't think we're going to have a single applicant ever use this particular rule. I really don't.
I think it was the best case scenario that we could have come up with in this situation.
But should a military applicant ever need it, it is there.
Other discussion on
This
this
point was
particular issue?
correct. It is the 15th.
December 15th on the meeting.
Is it going to be a 2-day meeting?
It is only slated for a 1-day meeting. You're welcome to stay the night, though.
All right, is that the only change?
There was one other thing I was going to reference, and I apologize, I'm going backwards because this one's at the very beginning. It's Rule 1255-01-.04. It's on my page 3, so it has to be somewhere near the front for you guys. Hold on, I'm looking.
Said 1255-01
01-.04. 4. It looks like
Three.
it's starts on page 3, but what I'm going to show you is on page 4, so. It's the application for appraiser license or certificate. And what I'm actually going to reference is actually on page 4, so sorry if that was confusing. On item number 6, we did make a change to, well, F and G were new anyway, but I think the previous amount was like $40-something on 3-month increments to 31.
Look, it says 3 6-month increments. I think it was per, it should be, you got a typo in there. Oops.
Sorry. So we changed those amounts to $31.25, and that should say per 6-month increment. For some reason, the word says 3 and the number says 6, but that's on the application for temporary authorization and temporary authorization issuance fee. And
But it is 6 months.
it is 6 months. I'm sorry, that's my fault.
Okay.
And then those same amounts are also referenced in the new military applicant rule as well. So, to my knowledge, those were the only substantial changes that were made in this process. A lot of it was just
Formatting paragraphs.
formatting,
Fixing a couple words for
putting some ands in these here and there, some colons and semicolons. These were the major things. So I just wanted to let you guys see this first before we go any further, because I don't want there to be.
And those were the only changes then? And we'll need to vote either to go with that or not go with
Right.
that? Okay.
Those-
There were some questions, and I think just want to make sure we're all clear on this, about the distance education and qualifying education and so forth. Where are we on that so that everybody's clear? Because I think there may be some confusion on this body as to,
This is not to, it's still incorporated in this as a proposal, the distance education. This isn't to decide whether that should be voted up or down. That can be done at the rulemaking hearing.
this is to get it to the hearing where
This
people
is-
can pontificate and
Right.
expand and
And we've
say what
got
they think about it.
letters galore for the commission to read.
So
We've
we-
got several of them here.
So we don't have to deal with that
No.
issue today?
The only
don't.
thing, the only thing I was doing was saying, hey, we made these substantial changes from the last time we talked about it, just to get your approval, because I didn't want to have hiccups once it came back from the governor's office.
Fair enough.
I think it might not, once you've finished this portion with Keeling, it might be nice to allow Mr. Hunter, who came in on his own time, to discuss his feelings about the rules. He just wanted like a minute of the commission's time, so.
Is that in regards to these two changes, or is it in regards to the rules in general?
The rules in general, so.
Okay, then I think from,
Either
as a point,
sense.
as proper order, we ought to go on and deal with this issue, put it to bed, and then we'll allow Mr. Hunter a few minutes.
That's all I have as far as the changes that have been made over the last couple of months.
Okay, well, you've heard the recommendation from legal in reference to those two specific sections, and the revisions as requested and agreed upon between the AG's office and our council. Do we have a motion to approve those changes?
So move.
Commissioner Thomas has made a motion to approve that. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Point has made it a second. Is there any further discussion?
Just
Commissioner McNamara, you are recognized. sir.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that the changes to the 3-month and 6-month number
Yeah.
and word will be
Yeah,
corrected.
that's my fault. I'm sorry.
Subject to that
I think I probably
correction.
changed it like 4 times and I can't get it right, sorry.
I
I've looked
did
at them
check,
a lot.
I did check the previous section in the military, and it is correct there.
Okay.
The numbers are correct, and the written portion is correct.
Chairman, I have a
Yes,
question,
sir.
please.
Commissioner Stanford, you're recognized, sir.
When we have the formal hearing, if there is a change at that point, what will be the procedure? Will this have to go back to the AG's office, or?
Can we deal with that issue separately? I think I don't know if that's germane to this motion. Well, maybe it is. Go ahead. Now that I'm thinking about it, I think it might be. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would just like to know what the procedure is. If there is subsequent to the public hearing, there is a change or a tweak or whatever, what will the procedure be at that point? Will it have to go back to the AG's office, or?
It has to go back through the AG's office anyway. Once the formal rulemaking hearing takes place, it has to go back through again to make sure that we've dotted all our I's and crossed our T's, because once they get finished with it, it's done. It gets filed with the Secretary of State's office. So yes, if there are any changes, even if there aren't, it's still going to go back through them.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, recommendation approved. We're still under discussion of rules-making hearing, and at this time, we have Mr. Hunter, Stan Hunter, and you recognize, sir.
Thank you for your time this morning. I want to discuss for just a few minutes with you the continuing education opportunities that are available to us as practicing appraisers.
Mr. Hunter, can I interrupt for 1 second? Can you please tell us who you're with, what agency, and your...
Absolutely.
Thank you.
My name is Stan Hunter. I have been a practicing appraiser in Nashville since January 2nd, 1990. I am a second-generation appraiser. My father, Bill Hunter, who I think Mr. Hall knows quite well, my father recently retired. I think this year is when he finally said he's had enough and went fishing. So I am in my 24th year appraising. I am currently serving as a staff appraiser for Land Safe, which is the appraisal arm of Bank of America. I know when I first started appraising, I was young and I knew everything. And if you don't believe me, you should have been there to ask me. Mr. Hall was there. He remembers when I knew everything. I'm now in my mid-40s and am trying to actually learn something. For the last 10 years, I've been thinking in my appraisal practice and the rest of my life as well, how much I truly didn't know. And also how fortunate I am to still be in good standing with the state of Tennessee, with the Appraisal Commission. Because some of the stuff I did early on, I think we can all say the same thing. When we were young, when we were rookies, we didn't know anything. Times have changed. Technology has moved forward. I was thinking about this morning. When I first got my license in 1990, a Ford F-150 got 16 miles per gallon. I'm now driving an 09 that will get an honest 21 miles per gallon on the highway. Technology's changed and allowed that to move forward. Same thing in the rest of our lives. My recent appraisal license renewal, I took 2 courses seated, 2 courses online, as is allowed by the commission rules. The 2 seated courses, and there's no other way to put it, they were a joke. The instructors, and I'm not here to badmouth them, I'm not going to mention them by name. The USPAP update course was taught by a gentleman who was very knowledgeable. He was 80 some odd years old. He could not see exceptionally well. He was in very poor health. His wife drove him to the classroom location, and approximately a third of the time was spent with him discussing his ailments, not the topic at hand. All due respect to him, I'm sure during his day he was a very good appraiser, but he was no longer a practicing appraiser, and he was in such poor health that he had to be transported to the site. I learned nothing. The other seated course, I can't even tell you the name of the course. The gentleman who taught it was from another state, flew in to give the course. I was seated next to Eddie Gray. Many of you know Mr. Gray. We spoke a lot during that day. He was continuously shaking his head, correcting the instructor regarding the topic at hand. Mr. Gray just about got up and walked out of the course. He'd had just about enough of it. The two online courses I took, one was on the 2 to 4 family appraisal report. It was an online course. It was for 7 hours of continuing ed. It took me 12 to go through it. It was through McKissick, and it was a very well done course. I think it being through McKissick just happened to be who it came from. The online course required periodic testing throughout the course period. It obviously required a test at the end to pass and get the experience credit hours. I learned more during that online course than I have in any course in the last 10 years. It is my belief that the state's insistence that we sit for half of our continuing ed courses in a classroom is outdated. It is my belief that some of the instructors are not in it for the good of the appraisers. I know I have had a course through a lady out of Louisiana who was more interested in selling her books that she's written than teaching the topic at hand. There's another instructor out of Kentucky. He's approximately my age, mid-40s. He's more interested in telling us how we should be running our appraisal practice, what we should be charging our clients for, etc., than teaching the course at hand. It seems like the instructors that are capable of teaching are more interested in giving their opinions on how the appraisal practice as a whole should be run rather than teaching the topic at hand. Also my opinion that based on my experience in sitting for the last 24 years in these courses, the majority of the instructors, couldn't properly hold a grade school class. I think we can all agree that this is college level material that we're going over. It's my hope that someday soon Tennessee will allow us to take all of our continuing education credit online, where we can sit in the quiet of our office, decipher the material in front of us, and actually learn something. I was discussing this topic with a few other appraisers over the last month or two, anticipating coming and speaking with you. And their opinions were pretty much mirror what I'm doing. I discussed with 8 or 10 different appraisers, and they all agree we're just marking time sitting in a classroom setting. So I would be happy to answer any questions you might have regarding my opinion, regarding my experience sitting in these classes. But I wanted to come and speak to you and tell you my opinions, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter. And I think as these rules continue to process and move down the path during the rulemaking hearing, we'll have an opportunity for any appraiser in the state to come and do exactly like what you just did. Is that? And we've got letters. We sent some surveys out, and so we'll have the opportunity to review all of that. And I thank you for sharing that. Is there any questions for Mr. Hunter this body has?
Yes.
Dr. McCara, you are recognized, sir.
Could you tell me how many online classes that you've taken approximately?
For my most recent appraisal license upgrade, or I'm sorry, review, renewal, I took 2, which was the maximum that was allowed by the state. I think I've done 2 for the last 3 renewals. When I first started taking, I'll admit openly, when we first started taking the online classes, the first ones were very Mickey Mouse type online courses. You could click through them on your mouse and be done in an hour. Oop, there's 7 experience hours. No more. They're not like that. I took, as I mentioned a minute ago, I took the 2 to 4 family course from McKissick. Very good. Very highly recommended. As a 20-plus year appraiser, I learned something from it. I took one about greenhousing. While I'm not really sure how that applies to my appraisal practice, I learned some stuff. I've took 6 to 8 online courses. There's only been the very first ones. The very first ones were real cheaply done. They were real Mickey Mouse type. Be done real quick. No more. They're not like that now.
Oh, the online classes that you took, were they sort of, trying to think how to describe, was there a human being who was actually talking to you at any point in that? Or was it all kind of computer type class where everything was like PowerPoints or something like that?
It's mostly a PowerPoint-based situation. These courses were obviously written by somebody. There is an introduction to the instructor that begins the course. There is an email type situation. If you have a question while you're taking this course, you can email the instructor that wrote it, and they'll get back with you. I have had the opportunity once. I had a question once during the 2 to 4 family, and I shot off an email to the gentleman, and he got back to me within 2 hours.
But there was no kind of live, when I say live lecture, that there was actually a human being talking. It may not have been, at the same time you were listening to it, sort of a pre-recorded lecture or something like that.
There was. Not only would we have to read what was on the page in front of us, on the screen in front of us, there was also sections where the instructor recorded some instruction. So
it was asynchronous?
Yes. Okay. So we read, we listened, we read, we listened. There was a quiz. Okay, we've been over the first chapter. Now let's see if you learned anything. And what impressed me is if you didn't learn anything, it sent you back to the beginning. Try again.
There wasn't an opportunity for you to actually ask the instructor a question while he or she was speaking?
No. It was a recorded speech, if you will. It was recorded instruction. And if you had a question, you emailed them. They had their email address right there.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any questions? Commissioner Hall, you're recognized.
Yes, sir.
Oh, Stan, what's going on?
Another day in paradise.
Your dad still, is he been a professional fisherman? When he going to go that route at one time, become a professional fisherman?
He did. He did.
That's what I'm thinking.
He joined the Bassmasters, and he's been touring professionally as a bass fisherman for, oh gosh, even while he was appraising, he was doing that. He's since been diagnosed with Parkinson's. But what I really love is he's been dealing with that for about 3 years. He was diagnosed with Parkinson's on a Wednesday. he went the following weekend and won a senior Bassmasters tournament. So he's not letting him slow him
Well,
down.
good. Well, you be sure to give him my regards if you will, please.
Absolutely. I'll say.
However, let me ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
Would you mind sharing with the commission these instructors that you're telling us about? Because in order for us to make sure that we've got people out here that are qualified teaching these courses, if somebody hits a bad instructor, we need to know about it. We know about, it's like watching somebody commit murder and then blame the police department because they don't arrest him, and nobody tells them.
I'm going to interrupt then. If he wants to do that, he should do it in the form of a written complaint.
But
'cause
I'm
if
not
you guys
asking him
ended
to
up
do it,
being-
I'm not
yeah.
asking him to do it in public, please. No. I mean, just in writing, I think we need to somehow or another find out who these people are, what organization they're with, so that we can follow up on that, because,
Otherwise, you couldn't serve as the jury.
Huh?
Because otherwise, if there was a contested case, then you
Yeah.
couldn't be the jury. So
but, no.
if he wants to file a complaint,
The
he needs to
the
submit it
thing
to our
about it
office.
is, though, as you know, I taught courses for a long time. I
Oh,
felt
yes.
like I got too old, didn't want to stand up anymore. But anyway, I agree with you. I think that some of our professors and teachers are more interested in the money than they are doing what they've been hired to do, and that is teach a specific subject. And I'm very, very disappointed that you were not able to enjoy that learning experience that you get from having a good instructor. I've been very fortunate. The instructors that I've always had have been very good. They've been practicing appraisers, and they know what they're talking about. I've always felt like one-on-one is a much better education, provided that you've got someone who is qualified to actually teach the course and is interested in the course. Otherwise, I think what you're telling us is right on. However, I'm one of those strange people. I did not get into this business to make money. Thank God it's happened. But that was not why I got into this business. I got into this business to do a good job. And when I was teaching, I tried to teach exactly what I felt to be the principles that were necessary in order for the appraisers to solve a problem. That still should be our point. I don't think we should talk about the book we wrote in order to get people to buy it. I don't think we ought to tell people how to operate that business. If they want to know my opinion on that, ask me at break and I'll tell you. But I don't think it ought to be before the class. So consequently, while I appreciate what you said, and I can't argue with the least bit, I've taken online courses, maybe just one, but I have taken one. And I still prefer the one-on-one with an individual, provided that individual is qualified and can answer the questions and help me solve the problem. I don't need to know anything else about, what they used to do 100 years ago or what their Aunt Jane cooked for breakfast. I don't need to know that. I'm there to learn something. I'm not there just to pay them the money and run. And I know a lot of professors probably feel that way about it. But I've always had a passion for this profession. And I reckon that's why, I feel the way I do about it. But I think nothing is more important than making sure our appraisers have the opportunity for the best education they can get. And I do appreciate you coming in and sharing with us your experiences. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hall. Is there any other questions from
Yes,
Mr. Hunter?
I have one more
Dr.
question.
McGarry, you are recognized, sir.
To follow up on Norman's request that you provide the names of the instructors, I would also be interested in knowing the courses as best as you can recollect or that you have record of, the courses you took that you found to be deficient.
I have that record in my office. I'll have to get all that together. Excuse me. I'll have to get all that together, and I'll get it to you.
Yeah, and
That's
when
no
you
problem.
took those classes, et cetera.
That's no problem.
That would
I
be
keep all
helpful to
my
me.
experience logs and so forth in a file, and it won't be any problem to do that.
That'll be helpful to me as the person who reviews courses for credit. And instructors, absolutely, yes. And don't get me wrong, I don't have a personal beef with these people. The older gentleman that I had the USPAP update course with, in 2013, was a very personable person. Seemed to be a very nice man. Don't have any problem with him wanting to make a living, pay his bills, etc. But it was obvious he was in over his head and was past his prime.
On a question, if he provides Dr. McNamara with that information, will that prejudice him as serving as a juror in the event we proceed with formal proceedings?
It needs to come to our
Okay.
office. We'll have to figure out a plan.
Figure out a
on
way to
that.
do it with anonymity. Okay.
Yeah, it's a somewhat unusual thing. It's been a long time since I've processed a complaint against an instructor. In my 8 years, I've only had one other situation that I'm aware of.
Any other
I have to
questions?
remember how to do that, but it can be done.
Any other questions for Mr. Hunter? If not, thank you so much for your time and being willing to share with us
Thank you.
that information.
Really, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, that concludes this portion. We are ready for legal. And Ms. Gamber, you are on the hot seat.
Okay, this is going to be really quick. There's only one item on the legal report, but it references two separate respondents. So item 1 references 2014-014951 and 2014-014952. This complaint was filed by a consumer and alleged that respondent's supervisor and trainee overvalued a property and said that the respondent's supervisor was on vacation at the time of the appraisal and the trainee was not supervised. Respondent sent a response to the complaint indicating that complainant attempted to influence his value opinion, indicating the contract price was too high, and told him the complainant was a licensed appraiser in another state. The subject property is a mixed-use property which consists of an older 3-bay strip center on the front of the tract with multiple storage improvements situated on the rear of the tract. He indicated the prior owner had passed away and the property was undermanaged and underperforming. The supervisor appraiser indicated he did not discuss or disclose any of the conversations with the buyer or the client with his trainee, as he did not want him to be influenced by complainant's attempts to influence value. He indicated when the appraisal was delivered, the complainant was unhappy with the appraised value and was totally unfamiliar with the DCF and did not seem to know that the income approach is based on the current value of future earnings. The value at stabilization, which we provided, was of course even higher. He wanted the property value based on the current occupancy, which we did not consider appropriate. The respondent indicated he was at a total loss as to how the complainant, being in another state during this entire process, could ascertain that respondent was on vacation for 10 days. On May 20th, 2014, the registered trainee appraiser met a representative of the owner at the property. The representative unlocked the property and left immediately afterwards. The respondent supervisor met the respondent trainee shortly after the representative left, and they spent approximately 2 hours inspecting the property. He indicated the complainant's statement is totally untrue, and he questions how he would have any knowledge as to the extent of the inspection as he was not present. After assisting in the overall preparation of the report and reviewing the final product, the respondent supervisor placed his signature on the report. He questioned how the complainant would have any knowledge of his whereabouts or activities while this report was being prepared or when it was signed. So this appraisal, the subject appraisal was sent to a reviewer, listed the reviewer's conclusions. They're a little bit lengthy, so you might need to take a minute to look over those. And then following those conclusions is the respondent's response to the conclusions, which is also rather lengthy. So if you want to take a minute to look over that and just let me know when you're ready to proceed.
Chairman, I would like to abstain from this case, so I'll just excuse myself for the time being.
For the record, that was Commissioner Walton. You ready? Okay. Ms. Gamber?
The reviewer found several significant deficiencies within the report prepared by respondent, including multiple development and reporting violations. Neither the supervisor nor the second respondent has been disciplined in the past. However, there were numerous violations noted, especially in the development of the approaches to value. As such, council recommends the authorization of consent orders, which require each respondent to complete a 30-hour general appraiser sales comparison approach course or a 30-hour general appraiser income comparison approach course to be completed within 180 days of execution of the consent order, such terms to be settled by consent order or formal hearing.
I have a question. This is a company out of Texas, is that right?
Correct.
They made the appraisal.
No.
Complainant was out of Texas.
Oh, the complainant was out of Texas?
Yeah.
Okay.
Question, was that an AMC company? Or was that just
I think so.
I assume a bank or lending institution?
Filed by a consumer, an individual.
An individual,
It looks like an individual.
and they lived in Texas. And the property was in Tennessee.
Correct.
And the appraiser evidently was from Tennessee.
Correct.
The complainant was an appraiser.
Was the reviewer or the person that turned it, the complainant, were they operating as a reviewer on this assignment? I'm not talking about to do the review there. I'm talking about, were they reviewing for a lender or a bank and then turned it in part of their job, or was this?
Not to my knowledge.
No, I think they just turned
It wasn't the reviewer from Bank XYZ who got this report and said, this something that doesn't look right, I'm turning in. It was just an appraiser.
Right, yeah, not to my knowledge. It
Floating
wasn't.
around from Texas.
I think this is his own.
Oh, an appraiser bought the property.
I believe that the appraiser, the complainant involved was an owner of this.
Any thoughts from this body?
Just to make sure I'm clear on what we have here. We have an appraisal that was made of this property here in Tennessee. The person filing the complaint was an appraiser out of Texas. The owner of this property was XYZ, or was it the appraiser out of Texas?
It's the same. It's the
Owns property here in Tennessee.
and I believe he owns the
Okay.
property.
And he had it appraised up here, and then after he got it, he said, wait a minute, I think its value is too high.
Yes.
And
I think what it appears as though is he was a potential buyer, Mr. Hall. As it says in here, the supervisor appraiser indicated he did not discuss or disclose any of the conversations with the buyer or the client with his trainee, as he did not want them to be influenced by the complaint's attempts to influence value. And it also discusses the previous owner had passed away and the property was undermanaged and underperforming. So those were assumptions made by the quote-unquote appraiser out of Texas, who I'm assuming may have been a potential buyer of this property, buying it from an estate, possibly. That's what I'm gathering out of that on page 1.
And if I follow that, they're also stating that the appraiser was out of town on vacation, and the registered trainee who's just recently licensed, he was licensed in August no, excuse me, September of 2014, would have been a trainee at that time. But that would not preclude a trainee from going on their own and doing that. That's not really an issue. Now it's kind of like what Mr. Collinsworth indicated. Somebody was trying to buy something and, there could have been, certainly there sounds like there was some issues maybe floating around in the report, but it's also some sour grapes floating around in there too, it sounds like.
There were, in my opinion, there were a lot of points brought up, but without us actually knowing the scope of work, there was an argument presented that the scope of work was improper from the reviewer. However, the respondent came back and said, I feel it was appropriate. So we never do see the engagement letter. We don't know what the scope of work was. He indicated that he should have done it as a lease fee. Again, just because it has a lease on it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be lease fee if the client wants fee simple. We don't know, we don't know that part. But I personally do have a problem with the fact that on page 5, they do concur with the reviewer's conclusions that the income from the retail building should not have been reported as 28.8. The correct number should have been 33,204, and they said the change will not have significantly affected the value opinion. That's about a 20% difference, roughly calculating in my head. And in my head, that's a pretty significant impact on value. I do have a little bit of problem with that.
Well, it depends. You don't know what the overall income stream is in expenses. It could be that there's a lot of expenses associated with that component of the income, or it may not. And if it's a $4 million property and and you're capping something in that effect, then that would probably factor out in rounding. So it depends. In my mind, I'm thinking it depends on the size of the property, how much money you're talking about, whether those are, because he said that the front was vacant and the back was mini storage. There may not have been any, I mean, I don't know, there's lots of questions there.
I know, there's a lot.
You can't really.
Question I had about this is about the sales comparison approach. And I've appraised several properties where in the front they got a little strip center, in the back they got many warehouses. I couldn't find any sales for that same combination. And so I could maybe find a sale of a retail strip. I may be able to find one of a mini warehouse, but is it proper just to take those two and add them together? I don't know. But to me, I won't that upset about the fact that the sales comparison approach was not shown, because I've been hit that same problem numerous times in the past. The data is just not there quite frequently. So just to criticize somebody for not using an approach when the data is not there, to me, is a little bit over the top.
Well, and the other thing, he talks about the cost approach with the words of reproduction and replacement. It sounds to me like they were using Marshall valuation and they just never changed it to replacement. But by the same token, it sounds like it's an old property, which I don't even, from what I'm reading here, the replacement, the cost approach might not even have been applicable.
That's right.
And so, so then there's just so many questions there. It's hard to make it, it's hard to say who's right and who's wrong with the limited amount of money. Because when I first read the review, I'm thinking, oh man, this person has got some issues. And then when I read the response, I'm thinking, well, I don't know. Maybe there's anything perfect, no, but does it rise to the level of Mr. Stanifer?
Up to know without knowing, having the full file, but
This be one of those cases where it would be worthwhile to have an informal, we used to do it years ago, not necessarily with an appraiser, but with an informal conference, just to kind of get more information.
Up to them. Right, if they request it, then we do an informal. If they don't request it, then we don't.
I'm not sure I've got enough information here to make a rational decision, to be honest.
What information do you think that we need to supplement? Because we could represent it next month. It wouldn't be it wouldn't be a problem for us to do that. But what information do you feel like would need to supplement.
Sterilized engagement letter would be helpful with the names, and that kind of stuff, but just to know what the scope of work was. Least fee versus the least.
That's a
fee,
big part right there.
If
If they requested lease fee and the appraiser provided fee simple, now we're going down a different avenue. Because he pretty much argued away most of the points brought up by the reviewer, if fee simple was appropriate. I mean,
And if the leases are all month to month, if they're.
or not provided. They even say in here that he requested them and he wasn't provided with them anyways, or they were month to
Provided with
month.
them, I mean, maybe.
pretty
he
much
should've-
have to go
Maybe
fix it.
should have stated in there that, but he did state. So, yeah, there's just some unanswered anything else this board?
And I, to your point there, Mr. Johnstone, that I do see that was only the retail building that should have been reported as 33,000. So that's only a portion. The warehouses could have been a considerable amount. So, I agree with you on that point as well, that could have been expensed away, a big portion of that.
Yeah, I mean, you just don't.
It could be tabled for a month and we can represent it. It's not I'd rather you make an informed decision than to wing it.
Had that information, would that be enough to walk away feeling decent about
Be
it? I don't
helpful.
know. I'm still.
I think it would help tremendously.
Take your time with this. If you need a few more minutes to look it over.
I would like to I mean, this is the last thing we have for today, isn't it? Yes. Okay, so we're going to be leaving here shortly. I'd like another.
Just want to table it till next month?
I'd like another at least 5 minutes to make sure that if there's anything else that I would like to have council provide us. And if y'all would look through it again and see if there's anything else that would help you make a decision, we can ask for that for next month.
Yes.
Could you,
At some point, we're going to be providing you with what would be considered proof in a formal hearing. And if we provide that to you, then essentially the other side.
my concern is I don't know how much income we had coming in off the warehouse part.
Break
I
that
don't know
down for
what
you.
the expenses are for either one of those. You mentioned about a discounted cash flow. I don't know.
Right.
So if it's a mini warehouse, that's quite frequently on a
I'm sorry, Michelle, can you do that just a little slower? Because there's no way we can keep up with you.
Oh, maybe it was on tape.
I mean,
thought
I
maybe
was,
it was on
no, I
tape.
was going pretty fast.
I'm sorry.
It's,
Can I interject before you do that?
Yes, sir.
I can go through and try to,
But I have
Solve that
a
information
solution
rather
that
than
might
giving
solve
the appraisal.
Mr. Hall's question. And it might create a problem for us, it might not. But in times past, when I served on this body back in 2003 through 6, we didn't have outside reviewers. We had individuals on this body would review the property and then present it with the attorney. Now, that person would recuse himself from any formal hearing had it proceed to that manner, but they would also have the informal conferences. They would also make recommendations. And so in this event, would it be appropriate to sign an appraiser off this body to look at that as an additional review and report back. And in the event it needed to rise to the level of something, formal hearing or so forth, that individual could recuse themselves from that process. Not saying on everyone, but in this one, would that be an option? And I'm asking legal for that. Because I know we used to do it. That would save everybody a lot of work except for the reviewer.
Mhm.
Can you tell me again what your idea was?
Okay, the way we used to handle all complaints back in 2000, I don't know when it ceased to be handled and we started going with outside reviewers. I'm glad they did, because there was a tremendous amount of work involved but what used to happen, the attorney would contact Commissioner Staniford and Commissioner Collinsworth, and if it was a complex income-producing property, then a CG would be given that report with the attorney and asked to review it and do exactly what this reviewer did. We might do one or two of those a month, and then we would provide back our recommendation in concert with our conversations with the attorney. And then whether it was dismiss, informal conference to get more, or whatever. The same process we do now, except rather than having an outside reviewer. And I like what we do now because I don't want extra work. I don't think anybody does. But, and I think the way we're doing it now is good. But I do think it might provide some clarity in this particular situation, because this appears to be somewhat complex, and I'm not sure, I don't know who did the review. And it just might be an option.
And he was adding also, he didn't add this time, that if it does go to a formal hearing,
They would have to
then they would
recuse.
recuse themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't have a problem with that.
And then also, we used to, because I was involved in one like that, and it was a 2-day hearing, 2-day meeting. First day we came, we conducted business. Second day was a formal hearing. And whoever the appraiser was, at that point in time, they would just go home because they didn't serve as a witness. But they did, they were recused from the proceedings. That's just a thought. I'm not saying we have to do it, but
I mean, if you
it's
think,
something that could be on the table.
yeah, if you think that would be best in this situation, then there's not a problem with that.
I'm just throwing it out.
I think that would be helpful in these more complex cases that seem to have several layers of complication. It's tough for us to get a feel for it, but I'm like Chairman Johnstone, I don't want to go back to help with this either. So a lot of cases, I think, can be handled just the way they are.
May I make a recommendation that Mr. Standifer be appointed to review this report with our attorney?
We have a motion for Mr. Standifer to review and report back his findings on this file in concert with the attorney. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
We can
I guess
discuss-
we're going
we
to
can
discuss,
yeah.
but
Okay.
I'll second
So
it, and let's discuss
Mr.
it.
Hall has made a motion, seconded by Commissioner Collinsworth. Any discussion? Commissioner Stanford.
So in this case,
I think it would be fair to ask, are you willing to do this as well? I mean,
can I ask a few questions first, please?
yes.
So in this case, if I review, what would I be reviewing, I guess would be the question.
The way I would envision it to happen is that you would get a copy of the report, and you can redact the names out of that if you'd like. If that makes it, better for you, you can ask, or you can see them. It doesn't matter. But you would get a copy of the report, and you would just review it front to back. And actually, I would say I wouldn't even look at this stuff. I would just review it in my own mind and then come back and take a look at what the reviewer that we hired, compare notes there and then compare notes with the respondent. Because you may read it and your take on the review may be totally different. And then then you can have a conference with Ms. Gamber, and it may come back that you agree there's some issues here and you recommend a 30-hour course, and that's all that happens. We recommend a 30-hour course and we go home. Or you may come back and say this rises to a more stringent level, and I'm going to have to recuse myself, but I think we need to go to formal hearing. So it could all go away next month, or it could continue. That's the way I would see it happening.
I would see this as a situation where whoever was looking at this would communicate or conference with Ms. Gamber, and at that point, she would present that back to the board at a subsequent meeting.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I don't have any problem doing this on this case, given that it's difficult to sort through it.
Where's Mr. Hall? Is he? Okay, fine. Until he comes back before we can vote, just for, I'm not advocating we make this something we do all the time, but I think in this case, there are some questions that would help with, if Ms. Gamber is okay with that. I want to say I appreciate Mr. Staniford for taking that. As also would help expedite next month's meeting, rather than having to go through all of this again. It'll be easy to address it.
May or may not.
Well,
Curious if we have to wait on Mr. Hall, since he
well,
was
we
the
don't. I
one
don't guess we have to.
who made the motion. We would.
We've got a
almost
quorum.
know.
It looks funny It looks funny in the minutes when the person who made the motion didn't vote on it, though.
Doesn't vote.
I don't think it's.
We'll wait.
I don't think it violates any Robert's Rules of Order, but
We'll
it
wait.
looks kind of funny.
Briefcase is still here, so we know here he comes.
I've been in many where the person who made the second voted in opposition, but I have not been anywhere where the person who made the motion voted in opposition or abstained.
Or abstain.
We usually do things backwards.
Make a
You're supposed
motion
to
and
put
then
something
abstain.
on the table before it's discussed.
Okay.
Usually we have to discuss things
The
before.
motion to allow Commissioner Staniford to review it and get it, and to get in contact with Ms. Gamber to report back next month's meeting. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, recommendation approved. Commissioner Collinsworth. And that concludes the legal report, I presume. Okay. All right. That concludes all of the business on the agenda. Is there any unfinished or old business to take up, or any new business to take up?
We need a list. We, the commissioners, need a list of all the commissioners and their phone numbers and emails with new members.
Okay.
I'll have Dennis send that out to you. We already have it.
Thank you.
A commissioner contact list, that would be awesome. Thank you. Is there anything else?
Yourself a note.
If not, that, we can go to lunch and we can come back and adjourn, or we can just adjourn.
Make a motion with adjourn.
I'm here.
We have a motion to adjourn, Commissioner Hall, seconded by Commissioner Collinsworth. Any discussion on adjournment? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We stand adjourned at 11:20.